Hello and welcome to Exploring Global Problems, a podcast where we talk to academics from Swansea University whose groundbreaking research is tackling global challenges, from health innovation to sustainable futures and the environment, from digital technologies to clean energy. My name's Sam Blaxland, and today I'm joined by Dr. Shane Heffernan, Senior Lecturer in Sport and Exercise Sciences at Swansea. Shane's interests are in genetics, molecular physiology and nutrition, diets and what we eat, isn't it? And plant-based diet stuff in particular, which, reading your notes before we started, you've got a particularly personal reason for being interested in, have you not?
So when I was in my early 20s, I was a big, strong, fit, healthy rugby player. And when I was in the gym once, I was lifting a relatively light weight at the time and passed out, which isn't unheard of in that kind of space with heavy weights and things like that. But I went to the GP anyway, again, early 20s, and I was big, but more muscular than currently, and did a blood pressure monitor for a couple of days or whatever it was, and basically it was just high blood pressure. But the GP's answer was drugs. So they said, "You're on drugs now for the rest of your life." And I said, "No way, is that okay? That cannot be right for someone in my age group. Yes, okay, I'm big, but it can't be right." And I went away and I looked at as much of the literature as I could find, and I read a few books on it, and there was people producing videos on all this stuff, like what can you do? And I started buying supplements, food supplements, because it wouldn't be a kind of pharmaceutical dependency if it was supplements. That was my thinking, at least. And most of them were plant-derived foods, amino acids and things like this that were beneficial. So I kind of went down that route and found vegetarianism and veganism, and there was a load of papers at the time, and it's the big papers that were talking about the cardiovascular benefits of plant-based diets, or in some cases the avoidance of certain foods like animal products or meat specifically, or processed meat specifically. There's an interesting paper recently actually that compared processed meats, plant-based processed meats, to animal processed meats. I mean, they did a load of stuff, but that was one part of it. The cancer risk was there with the animal meats, which has been shown lots of times, but I think that was the first study to do the comparison with plant-based meats, and the cancer risk wasn't there. So there's something different going on there, which was a surprise to me.
So, simplifying it, are we basically saying you used to eat meat, and that was a big contributing factor to having unusually high blood pressure for your age?
So that's an anecdotal story, obviously.
Sure.
And that's what led me down the scientific route to end up studying it with OMNIPLaNT. But do I think it was the only part? Absolutely not. Diet is a part of your life. It's not your entire life. Being a large man was also part of it. Having a large muscle mass was also part of it. If you look at that data, which was, again, surprising to me at the time, it's not just fat mass. It's mass of any kind, which kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? Even intuitively, the more blood that has to circulate around your body. Yeah, so it was certainly part of it. But when I changed that bit and didn't change the rest, I don't have high blood pressure now, even being a chunky monkey. And sometimes if I get very, very chunky, which I do often, it goes high, but never goes like the height was like 192 over 110 or something.
Oh God, that is
and
high.
Sustained for days. Yeah, so it never goes anywhere near that high now. It barely gets into the old categories of hypertension now. And it's easy to control because all I have to do is like slow down what I put in my face, which is quite difficult for me. Genetically speaking, I am actually, there's a gene called a gene called FTO. And if you have the bad version of that gene, what I'm calling the bad version of that gene, you are more likely to put on weight and be heavier. And it's generally down to eating behaviors and appetite. And I unfortunately have that gene.
What's the opposite of that gene? Because I eat loads and I can't put on weight even if I try.
Yeah, I mean, there are genes associated with that as well.
It's really annoying. Like I want to be bigger. I'm pretty scrawny.
Yeah. Eat more plant protein.
Okay, well,
no, that was a joke. Just eating more to how you exercise. But there is generally a genetic variation in the capacity. There's this big study called the Heritage Family Study, which looked at the endurance capacity of individuals, and saw that there's a kind of a really strong heritability. I think it's about 50% heritability, your likelihood of adapting to fitness exercise, right, to aerobic capacity. And that's a lot, right? That's a huge amount to try and fight with food if you have the muscle mass version of that, i.e. if you struggle to put on muscle mass.
Interesting.
Yeah, lift heavier though.
I'll try. So from a personal and a academic perspective, you would argue that people should eat less, no meat?
So the OMNIPLaNT study, again, long acronym, so we don't have to go to the actual words. The purpose of that study is, for a long time, and even still, people are ascribing anecdotal evidence, including what I've just done there, to a life choice and a meaning and things like that. So before I made that choice, I read loads of papers and books and things like that. There's an awful lot we don't know about what plant-based diets will do, good or bad. And what the OMNIPLaNT study is doing is it's looking at things that me and my team are interested in, which are generally muscle and some cardiovascular measures at the moment, and exercise phenotypes as well, to see, does a plant-based diet affect these things, right? For example, if you live habitually and eat only plants like I do for the last 10 years or so, not just me in this case, but after controlling for physical activity, training history, all this sort of stuff that you can do statistically, is there any effect on muscle mass, right? Or is there any effect on muscle quality using some ultrasound measures? And the questions to that is ongoing. We're still recruiting and still doing stuff there, but it's really cool. We've got about 170 or 80 people now, and the plan is to grow that a lot more before we try to publish. But the idea is to try and, if there is any possible detriments to the diet, people need to know. And if there is any major positives, people need to know, and then you can make a choice.
So you are a vegan?
Nutrition vegan, yeah.
What's the difference?
You can be a vegan for many, many reasons. So you can be an ethical vegan where
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that I'm not, this is after tying myself up here. So I don't eat animals because I believe, and I have read a number of research articles and books, etc., that has convinced me enough that it is more beneficial to my health not to eat animals. There's a group of people who do that as well, and also believe, and if you read books about this sort of stuff, it's very difficult not to adopt this belief, even if you didn't have it, about animal cruelty side of things.
Oh yeah, that's
that sort of jazz. And there's also the environmental side of things. So if you are an environmentalist, it's fairly conclusive. You should be avoiding animal products, or at least reducing them.
I'm very carnivorous, sort of cards on the table, but I'm always surprised at how the animal cruelty argument seems to have kind of dissipated away a bit. When I was growing up, it was sort of the main argument for vegetarianism or whatever, but it seems to have got superseded by other things. But it's a really massive issue, some of the conditions that animals are kept in.
Yeah, I think to be fair, in Britain and in the EU, it's not as bad as it is in the US, certainly in other countries. There's a book, there's a guy named Peter Singer, I'm going to get his name wrong, sorry Peter, who he's basically the guy who started the animal cruelty revolution, if you will, back in the 70s. So he wrote a book about basically describing these things. Basically, people were kind of going into, we'll say, abattoirs and leaving copies of his book everywhere, this sort of stuff. And he's recently just updated his book, and I've been reading it, and it's kind of difficult to read some parts of it because of some of the awful stories. And he's updated it in 2023. Like, this stuff is still going on, but mainly, I mean, I'm sure it's happening everywhere. There's no doubt about that. But mainly in America, the conditions of some of these animals are in. And they can feel and they can think, etc., etc.
Yeah, the pigs in particular are so clever. Anyway, maybe we're going slightly off topic. To summarise, because I mean, I've looked at this a little bit, obviously nothing as close to detail as you have, but there is stuff out there that will say that eating meat, perhaps in moderation, is good for you in terms of protein intake and various vitamins and minerals. So there's that side of the argument too, is there not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's
it's quite person specific, I suppose, as well. Like for you, you've decided it's not suitable.
Yeah, well, the thing is that information is power, right? The knowledge is power. Being able to make informed decision is the most important thing in the world. What OMNIPLaNT is doing is trying to help that argument, giving people information to decide. There is no rational thinking to say that you can't get enough protein from eating plant sources, right? That's gone. That idea is over. There will be, for each particular plant source, we'll say soya, there will be amino acids, which are the kind of parts of protein that are important for building tissues and muscle and stuff. There'll be some of those higher and some of those lower. Nobody, that's a generalization, but nobody eats just a single plant. we eat multiple plants together, and when you combine plants together, you get those things. There's been a couple of really cool studies coming out of McMaster that have done these kind of studies where they take muscle biopsies and look at the amount of kind of protein synthesis is what it's called, where you get people to exercise in some cases, give them different types of protein. And if you simply consume slightly more, well, maybe not slightly, but if you consume more plant protein than animal protein, you can get the same results that you can get by just eating a little bit more, which is totally feasible for young, healthy people. Whether it's feasible in older individuals who already don't have a strong appetite is something we're going to try and look into later.
I could talk about all of this for a lot longer, but we are running out of time. So Shane, it's been, all the things we've spoken about have been so interesting. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks.
If you want to find out more about Shane's research, you can visit his staff profile page on Swansea University's website. To find out more about this podcast and Swansea University's research, visit swansea.ac.uk/research. That's all for us today. Thanks for listening, and thank you again to my guest, Dr. Shane Heffern. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow us. I'm Sam Blaxland, and that was Exploring Global Problems from Swansea University.